After a very successful introduction into the MCU in Homecoming, Spidey returns from the big unknown called the Blip, along with other classmates for a school trip to Europe. How will this journey abroad play out, and how will it compare to the previous entry? Hi there, it's Micha. Join me for another visit into Sony's Spider-Verse, courtesy of Marvel and the MCU. It is not exactly clear how much time has been passed since then in this last official entry in MCU's Phase 3, but it is indicated that it is less than a year, likely only a few months later. The world is still readjusting. While some schoolmates were gone for 5 years and have recently returned unchanged, the others that lived through it had already graduated, and previously younger kids are now sharing class with the returning pupils. As the screenplay gods will have it, all of Peter's more important classmates made the 5-year jump unchanged, like his best friend Ned, Flash, the guy who always keeps teasing him.
What is it with you and Spider-Man?
What, he looks out for the neighborhood, has a dope suit, and I really respect him. Sup, dickwad?
And of course MJ, his love interest. Peter really wants to use this as a break from his hero persona and concentrates on winning MJ's heart, just being Peter for a change. He is even leaving the costume at home, though his Aunt May packed it for him, just in case. Sure enough, every place he goes, giant monsters are showing up, so-called elementals, harnessing the powers of either earth, water, fire or air. Luckily, Peter isn't alone as a new superhero emerges to fight those things.
You don't want any part of this.
Someone the press named Mysterio, as his first public appearance happened in Italy. Also, Nick Fury is pursuing Peter.
I don't really want to talk to Nick
Answer
Fury.
the phone.
Why?
Because if you don't talk to him, then I have to talk to him. You sent Nick Fury to voicemail?
I gotta go.
You do not ghost Nick Fury.
Trying to recruit him for a mission.
So nice to finally meet you, Spider-Man.
Which turned out would team him up with Mysterio, who revealed his true identity to be Quentin Beck. Fury seems to want to pressure Peter into becoming the new Tony Stark, the mentor whose death he still hasn't fully processed.
Are you going to step up or not?
Fury even hands Peter a pair of high-tech sunglasses, courtesy of the late Tony Stark, which allows their wearer access to the most advanced computer artificial intelligence, called Edith, who, among other things, controls an army of Tony's battle drones, useful for every occasion. Peter doesn't feel he is ready for this kind of responsibility. Quentin, aka Mysterio, on the other hand, a hero coming to our Earth from an alternative reality,
You're saying there's a multiverse?
in which the elementals destroyed the planet, seems to be perfectly suited for this task, and he quickly becomes some kind of a new mentor for Peter. Will Peter manage to keep his identity a secret? And will he, together with Quentin, be able to stop the dangerous threat of the elementals? At least he makes sure to get a different costume, as Spidey appearing everywhere an American high school class shows up might be a teeny bit suspicious. As I tried to still keep this review spoiler free, even though the movie is a few years old, I will stop the synopsis here and get into more details in the spoiler zone at the end of this video. This second entry is a nice continuation of a light-hearted first movie, highlighting that the stakes are getting higher for young Mr. Parker. Like in the old trilogy with Tobey Maguire, also in the second movie there, Peter starts to struggle with keeping his private life and his superhero alter ego in balance. While this and the Maguire movies heavily impacted the mood, giving the movie a depressive feeling throughout its runtime, the MCU entry shows us that you can still keep the tone lighter, even when struggling with this very special kind of work-life balance. There are some very funny elements in the story from the get-go, like Ned trying to convince Peter not to court MJ yet, as he wants to have his best friend as a wingman on this bachelor trip to Europe, which Ned sees as a one-time opportunity. This is until Ned falls in love with his classmate Betty Brant right off the bat, after one of Peter's ploys to get closer to MJ terribly backfires and Peter ends up spending the long flight to Europe next to his teacher, while Ned ends up next to Betty, and by the end of the flight, they are a couple. The movie also makes up for Happy acting so jerkish in the previous movie. He now is very supportive of Peter, which may have something to do with May, Aunt May that is, as they are now dating.
Happy.
You look nice.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. New dress?
Yes, it is. How'd you know?
What just happened?
Even if this likely has just been to get into her good graces, at least in the second half of a movie, Happy is legitimately partnering with Peter.
Get on the jet! Who are you? I work with Spider-Man. You work for Spider-Man? I work with Spider-Man, not for Spider-Man.
And in a very touching scene in which Peter uses Tony's tech to create a new Spidey suit, Happy actually recognizes this spark of Tony and Peter that everyone around him tries to project on the boy. Tony's deadly sacrifice is still fresh and can be felt in many scenes throughout this movie, mainly in scenes where Peter or Happy or both together miss their mentor, boss and friend.
Yeah, I miss him too. I don't think Tony would have done what he did if he didn't know that you were going to be here after he was gone.
Also funny though, how much Tony likes to remind everyone of his achievements, even after death. Best showcased by the name of the AI Peter is handed, Edith, which is an acronym standing for Even Dead, I'm the Hero. Quick Easter egg, Edith is voiced by Dawn Michelle King, an assistant editor of many MCU films including Far From Home. There's also a returning gag which may turn into a running gag. Like Peter's suit in the first movie, Edith has drastic kill settings out of the box. Something that should be a last resort and for Tony and Peter always was, but still seems to be too easy to access in Stark technology.
Is Brad a target? Yeah, he's a target.
Target is Brad Davis. Initiating strike. Releasing kill vehicle.
Initiating what now?
A lot of the cast from the previous film returned. Alongside May, Happy, classmates Ned, MJ, Betty and Flash, Martin Starr again plays the class teacher, this time in a larger role. While Hannibal Buress, the class's coach, is not joining the trip, JB Smoove is also tagging along, making his MCU debut as the school's principal. The movie also makes it clear that Zendaya's MJ is not simply a love interest or a potential damsel in distress, like Kirsten Dunst's role was reduced to. This MJ surprises Peter with having put clues together on her own.
MJ, I
am Spider-Man.
No, of course I'm not.
I mean, it's kind of obvious.
Not relying on things to get spelled out for her. She also actively joins the fighting. The effects are better than those in the previous Spidey entry. The CGI is not as blatantly recognizable as it was in the first entry. I would say it is on par with the second Amazing Spider-Man movie, which was the most impressive up to that point. And the effects for the 4 elementals we see in this movie are also pretty impressive. By the way, as they are their own thing in this movie, an interesting side note is that they were modeled after different Spider-Man villains from the Marvel comic books. Namely Hydro Man, Molten Man, Sandman and Cyclone. One big question that is asked a lot throughout this movie is, where are the Avengers? We know now from different TV shows some of their whereabouts, but at the end of Phase 3, where this movie takes place, it was largely unanswered.
There's gotta be someone else you can use. What about Thor?
Off-world.
Captain Marvel? Unavailable.
And even as I filmed this review after having watched the sequel, No Way Home, some questions are still open. I guess this is what the first half of Phase 4 is all about. One last call out before we go to a rating. This movie does not feature a cameo of Stan Lee, as he passed away the year before in 2018. Same as Spider-Man co-creator Steve Ditko. The movie is dedicated to both of their memories. Let's get to the rating. The movie comes with better effects and bigger stakes than its predecessor. We have some mind-boggling twists, which I will touch on in the spoiler zone, as well as fantastic setups not only for the next Spider-Man movie but for the MCU as a whole. Therefore I have to score this one higher as Homecoming, which got 8 out of 10 points from me. Even though there were some small caveats, which I will address in a moment, really almost everything was done perfectly in this excellent movie. So let's go with a 9 out of 10 points. Now if you don't want to get spoiled but enjoyed this video so far, please like it now before you leave, and if you are no subscriber yet, maybe consider to change that. If you don't mind spoilers or have already watched the movie, please follow me into the spoiler zone. I will try to keep the spoiler zone short, so let's jump right into the main spoiler. All the elementals Mysterio was fighting were fake, created by holographic projectors. with all the damage being done by drones. Quentin Beck obviously didn't come over into our world from another universe, but it was a nice gambit playing with this idea already, knowing that it will be a major part of Phase 4. Still a pity as Beck named our Earth as Earth 616, like in the comics, which I was thrilled to see becoming canon, but which now is reduced to a throwaway in-joke. Likely. Or isn't it? Have you seen Doctor Strange yet? Beck turned out to be just a disgruntled ex-employee of Tony Stark, who often never thought twice when it came to decisions around his technology, sometimes destroying people's lives' work in the blink of an eye and sometimes taking credit for what was created within his firm. With a group of like-minded, discarded ex-Stark engineers, they planned to build up a hero in Mysterio who could take over Tony Stark's position in the world, which they could have done actually on their own, based on all that knowledge and know-how, but they feared that only real hero action could bring this about. So Quentin was building up his persona. A big part was as well to convince Peter that Beck could take this position, that he was the next Tony Stark, not Peter himself. This way, he would hand over the sunglasses controlling Edith voluntarily, which he does. As Jake Gyllenhaal injected the role with so much sympathy for Peter and played a very charismatic hero in the first half, we absolutely get that Peter fell for it. Now, with access to Edith, the illusions Beck and his team could create became even more spectacular. For some moments, by the way, I felt this story to be too far-fetched, mainly because of the technology needed to pull off that mislead. But this is still a Marvel movie. Technology was always over the top in these movies. They are still sci-fi fantasy fare, so all is fine. Especially since the MCU now even has magic in the mix. Disbelief successfully resuspended. After Peter realized Quentin's plan, Beck's charm took a 180 and he revealed the evil villain inside. Someone who at first we would have thought to be a torn individual, hesitant to kill, but he quickly leaned into that, delivering Peter some very violent fights, and he shows little mercy when trying to kill a teenager. This change makes him one of the meanest villains we have seen so far, only interested in his own furthering, mainly driven by greed. He died trying to kill Peter and is so petty to even have a contingency plan to deliver his revenge. In a mid-credit sequence, we are shown leaked and manipulated footage that makes Spider-Man look like a stone-cold killer, killing Mysterio, the hero, in cold blood, while also revealing Spidey's true identity being Peter Parker. This end directly sets up the story of No Way Home, which builds on the idea of the whole world knowing. In a mind-bending reveal, the footage was presented by J. Jonah Jameson, played by J.K. Simmons, who also played him in the original Spider-Man trilogy. This marks the first appearance of an actor from the previous properties playing the same character in the MCU, officially. Another early hint that Phase 4 will have a lot to do with the idea of the multiverse. In my mind, Jameson is not only a character that exists throughout the whole multiverse, he looks the same in each of them as well. Since we never saw him in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, just read from him via email, he might have been Simmons in that version too. We will likely find out along the way, as Phase 4 will reveal more and more about the multiverse. The post-credit sequence then reveals that Nick Fury and his sidekick Maria Hill were never really there. They were in fact Ben Mendelsohn and Sharon Blynn, making a cameo appearance as the Skrulls Talos and Sorin, reprising their roles from Captain Marvel. We are also shown that Nick Fury is in space, having sent them on his behalf, while he is working with the Skrulls. Back then I thought it would be a setup for the creation of SWORD, an organization similar to S.H.I.E.L.D., but focusing on matters in space instead of on Earth. Now, after a lot of Disney Plus shows were announced and one of them is called Secret Invasion, with Samuel Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn confirmed to star in it, it might just be the setup for that show. Or both. Why not? You never know. What I was asking myself though, as this was not the real Nick Fury, would he had pushed Peter the same way, making him part of something he didn't feel ready for? Even though at the end it helped Peter to find his place in the world? I want to say no, but again, who knows? At least it was a nice way out to make them shapeshifters, as I felt Nick to be a bit of a jerk in this one.
Bitch, please, you've been to space.
Which wasn't him at all. And brilliantly mirroring Homecoming, where Aunt May found out.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker.
The last spoken words in this one are
What the?
cut off by the credits setting in. What's your take? Did you think the twist was believable? Or was the technology too far-fetched in your opinion? Let me know in the comments. So much for now, see you next time and thanks for watching.